What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to yet another episode for the build series on the 1974 CB450. And in today's episode, we pulled the engine out of the frame. We have it on the engine stand that I custom built. You can reference that video here. I go through the whole process of building an engine stand for the CB450 and kind of in general for any engine. But in the meantime, let's roll the intro and get right into the contents of this episode. I'm gonna go ahead and do a compression test, because I never did. If our compression is in the clear, good numbers, great numbers, I am going to not pull the pistons off or put new rings. I'm just gonna take the top end off, refresh it, put new gaskets in, clean everything up, get the carbon buildup off, and put it back together, paint everything, and ready for assembly. Not gonna go crazy. I bought new clutch plates. Those will go in. I will do a full engine, I'll do a full oil change, clean the magnetic oil filter thing that's inside there, and new gaskets, new bolts, new paint, new ignition. I'm gonna go with new electronic ignition. I'm gonna get rid of points, put an electronic ignition in there, and we should be dialed in. New gaskets all around, new paint all around. I'm thinking I'm gonna go with like a satin black this time instead of silver. But without further ado, I'm gonna sort through my process of how I'm gonna unfold things, and I'll hop back on in a few moments here. I wanna point something out. Whenever taking apart anything that requires meticulous placement and small parts that you can't lose, yada yada, organization is always at the forefront of my mind. And that is what I wanna talk about right now, is organization. There's certain things where you can have a little scatterbrain, a little bit of disorganization, but when it comes to pulling the top end off a motor or pulling apart a motor at all, it's very helpful and important to overthink your organization a little bit more than you may be used to. Before I hop on the tripod, I just wanted to kind of stress the importance of certain jobs requiring a certain level of organization and thought, because you will thank yourself later once you go through it, because I'm sure people can do it other ways, right? But what I recommend and what I've found best for me, especially being a first-time builder with the 750, it was very helpful and crucial to have the organization that I did. I'll pop up a photo right here of an example of how I lined up all of the parts and components for the engine. So I'm gonna do a similar thing here, just on the lift table now that I have it. So I'm very excited. Let's get on the tripod, cue the music up a little bit, and let's take apart the top end. I have decided something, my friends. A little backstory. The reason why I never did a maintenance overhaul on this was because like 95% of the bolts on the case, especially the stator and especially the oil side where the filter is, are all stripped. And at the time, I didn't really know how to take apart strip bolts and deal with these things and work through how to overcome not knowing how to do something, so not necessarily having the right tools. And now that I've accumulated a fair bit of knowledge on how to work through some of those things, I've decided, instead of just straight up ripping apart the top end, I am going to first do a maintenance overhaul, meaning tighten the timing chain, one. Bring both cylinders at the bottom of the compression stroke, so there's the utmost slack in the timing chain. I just did this on the other CB450. I can reference this video here. And I'll get the timing chain tightened properly, and then I'll go through and adjust my valves. Once I do that, I'm gonna do a compression test again and see if we get any better results. If we end up getting better results, I'm not gonna take apart this thing. Because why take something apart when everything checks out? There's no reason to open up this engine if all of my tests work. So I'm going to go through and do a valve clearance check, timing chain tighten, and that should give me a far more accurate idea of the actual health and condition of the engine. Until then, I am not going to take apart any studs or anything of that nature, because there's no need to at the moment. So it's always good to think a little bit prior to just jumping in. That's one thing I'm really bad at. I just jump in and go for it, which sometimes it's good, most times not. So in this case, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to think twice and do what's smart in the moment, and that is looking at the valve adjustment and timing chain tighten and see if we get any better results on the compression test. Let's go do that. We have great compression on the right cylinder. Look at that. About 160. Look at that. That's a great sign. Unbelievable sign. Great. Let's try it one more time. This is a great test because now I won't have to do something for no reason. Like, it's the classic saying, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And this means, you know, theoretically, I really shouldn't even have to take this top end off. I still am on the fence about that, to be really honest with you guys. I was honestly just thinking, clean it up, block it off, and just freaking spray it. Once I check this left side compression, I should be getting good seats on the valves, and this is the only thing that holds me back. It's like, you're putting all this money, all of this time into building this motorcycle that's gonna be freshly painted, all done. The last thing you wanna do is have to pull the engine when the bike is finished. Of course, you know, it's not the end of the world, but when the bike is finished, when the build is finished, you've poured all of that attention, that detail, that money into something. You know, you don't wanna have to go backwards to the extent of pulling the engine. What I am struggling to think through is, do I just take the top end off, which I know how to do. I haven't done it on this particular engine, but I know how to do it. I trust myself, let's put it that way, that's all you need to know. And clean up the carbon, you know, lap the valves just a little bit, nothing crazy, just to reseat them well. I think it would be worth it. Put a new head gasket on, new valve covers, really make sure there's no leaks. That's really what I would ultimately do it for, just to clean up, put it back together, make sure there's no leaks, and call it. So, I don't know. That's kind of where my head's at. Now, we are testing the left cylinder PSI for the compression. Okay. You know, not bad. And again, compression is also a result of your valve adjustment. So these haven't had or seen a valve adjustment since I don't even know when. I never did one. I rode it for a season. Was not a smart decision because I was chasing my tail trying to get this thing to run properly. But when you don't have a properly maintained engine and ignition, it's very difficult to achieve the ultimate result for compression and performance. So you want to go through all that stuff before you tune carbs, and I did it the complete ass backwards way. And when you tune carbs without doing your valves, your timing chain, and your ignition, you run circles like trying to chase your tail like a dog. So here's a little amateur pro tip. If you're having carburetor issues and you haven't went through your 1,500, 2,000 mile maintenance check that you have to do every time on these engines, good luck trying to tune your carbs. I would recommend taking a step back, put your carbs down where they belong, which is not in your hands, move forward, do your timing chain, do your valve adjustment, do your ignition timing, and then move to syncing the carbs and then tuning the carbs to finalize everything. If you go in that order, you should have good luck. All right, let's do one more test. We were just at like 148 PSI. Okay, 140. So, I'm happy with that. I am happy with that. I wish it was a little closer, but I guarantee you it's because the valve adjustments are actually easier. 250, baby. That's 160, guys. That's 160. Bam! That's awesome. Yes. Look at that. I told you guys. See, if that doesn't make any sense, I don't know what does, because that's the difference in 15 PSI right there, based off a simple timing chain tighten and valve adjustment. It's very crucial. You know, guys, I really don't think I'm gonna pull this apart. I don't see any benefit by it other than getting new gaskets out of it. Let's see what the right side is, if it gets better or stays the same. Guys, we have 160 PSI in both cylinders. This is awesome, awesome news. Awesome news. Wow, let's go. Oof, that's the sound of 160 PSI releasing from your compression tester, boy. All right, guys, I know I'm back and forth, and it sounds like I'm very indecisive here, but I promise you I'm not indecisive by any means. I'm trying to play with the ideas of, is it really worth taking this apart? I'm pushing 160 PSI in both cylinders, post valve adjustment and timing chain adjustment. Granted, you can never lose by just cleaning the top end, getting the carbon off, getting all the crud, and making sure the valves are perfectly seated by cleaning them and lapping them fast, nothing crazy. And you have the benefit of 100% having a sealed engine with brand new gaskets, so there are pluses with taking the top end off. However, I don't recall if this head gasket leaked or not. So that's also part of the equation. Again, I am like in real time thinking, just on camera. I feel like I've had some people request that, so we're gonna try it out. I'm trying it out, and this is what I go through. This is what happens in the garage. This is what goes on in my mind. I'm just speaking out loud, and I'm very torn because I spent a couple $100 on parts to do a top end rebuild and refresh, thinking I was going to do it regardless. Now, I have a perfectly good motor with zero issues, and I'm thinking of taking the top end apart. Listen, I get it. We're here, we're right here. This is what's really, really screwing me up, is we're right here. Like, the engine is right here. And if anything is gonna happen, if we're gonna do anything to this engine, it's now. And that's why I'm thinking, you know, we're here, might as well. But, you know, I don't know. That means I gotta cut the timing chain. I have a new one, but I've never mushroomed a link before, so that's difficult. I've never done that. I don't know. It can't hurt. It doesn't take a long time to do, but, you know, I'm thinking it could be the smart play. That's really what it comes down to. All right, guys. I have made the executive decision. I am not going to tear this apart. Upon further inspection, I'm going through, and although, you know, I don't want to have it painted and then, you know, have issues in the future, I really don't see that happening. You know, in the future, if I have to end up pulling the motor, it's not the end of the world. Of course, it's not going to be ideal, but it's not the end of the world because it's not like the 750. This motor is much lighter. It's a lot easier to get in and out of the frame. So I'm going to make the executive decision, and upon my inspection, everything is in check, within spec, and doing really well, very, very healthy. I went through and I recall having a slight leak from the head gasket, so I went ahead. A couple of the head bolts were a little loose, so I went, retorqued them to an extra pound tighter, and they all torqued down really well, very nicely. And I'm not gonna stress over this. I'm simply going to plug it up, wash it, and give it the proper paint and cleaning. So I'm not going to touch this thing because, frankly, I don't really want to. I have the stuff in case need be ever needing that. I have great compression. Both cylinders are at 160, 165, within perfect of each other, not any different from each other. The valve seals look okay. I looked in there on the bores. The bores look good. The cam chain looks great. The valve train looks great. The cam lobes look good. The cam chain is tightening up properly. This thing only has 8,000 miles on it. There's no need to really break into it unless you really have to. And frankly, I'm not gonna touch it. And if I ever have to touch it again, I will overbore it to, you know, a 500cc or something crazy like that. I'm gonna leave this alone. And whether this is the end of the episode or not, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have time to get this painted in this episode, but the next engine episode will be prepping and painting the engine. Sorry for the weird episode. It was more of a bring you along for the thought process episode, I believe, which, you know, I guess there is value in that. Maybe not the most entertaining, but there is value in being part of this journey, because we don't get to see this part of the builds. We don't get to see this part of the process, and I think it's very important. That's what I was kind of alluding to in the unboxing video, was it's hard to think in the future for a lot of this stuff, and hopefully by you hearing me say it out loud, it A, helps me say it out loud and hear myself, and B, hopefully helps one of you at the very least in the process of thinking in the future. For me, I'm thinking in the future by, you know, deciphering the pros and cons between leaving it alone or touching it. And to me, it's a mixture of necessity and, you know, want. And I don't really want to break into something that's not broken and something that is fully operational, you know? So I'm gonna leave it at that. I torqued the head bolts down a little bit more, and, you know, fingers crossed we don't have any crazy leaks when it's all painted. I'm not gonna be too concerned with it, honestly. Thanks for watching, and I know this wasn't a very eventful episode, but there was value in my opinion. You got a lick of what it took for me to rebuild the 750 engine. This doesn't even compare to what I had to deal with that thing. So thankfully, this thing is in great shape. Not too many issues at all, if any. Knock on wood, this thing seems like it is golden, ready to go, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take apart the starter motor and get it prepped and ready for paint, and that's kind of what the next episode will be on the engine, and then it's pretty much done. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, remember, at Milezero Racers, we're one team and one family. That is why I feel it is important to bring you along with the whole journey of thought process, the boring stuff, the fun stuff, the entertaining stuff, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to learn, and we're all in the same boat at some point, and my whole concept is to hopefully help, you know, a beginner have a little bit more confidence in all of the unknowns, because building a bike like this is the definition of unknowns. Building the 750, I had no idea what fabrication I had to think forward in advance for, with the electrical upgrades and the new components, and where to place things, and how to align and make sure things flowed properly, or am I ready for powder coat yet, or am I forgetting something? So that's kind of the whole idea behind me bringing you on this thought process journey, was weighing pros and cons. That's really what it comes down to. So as always, MZR fam, thanks for being dope, and I'll catch you in the next episode. Peace.